James Harden has been traded to Brooklyn Nets in blockbuster trade deal. The Houston Rockets has traded James Harden to the Brooklyn Nets as part of a four-team trade, which will lead to him reuniting with Kevin Durant and gives him the move that he has sought for weeks, according to multiple reports. Harden is going to the Nets as part of a four-team deal that also involves Indiana and Cleveland, according to the person who spoke to the Associated Press on Wednesday. To acquire Harden, the Nets parted with promising young players and a host of assets in a trade that also involved the Cleveland Cavaliers and Indiana Pacers. The Nets will send Rodion Kurucs, first-round picks in 2022, 2024 and 2026 and swaps in 2021, 2023, 2025 and 2027 to Houston. Brooklyn will also send center Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince to the Cavaliers, who will send Dante Exum and a 2022 first-round pick to the Rockets. The Rockets, meanwhile, will reroute LeVert to the Pacers for Victor Oladipo. Harden made no secret of his displeasure in Houston, which underwent massive organizational changes during the offseason. When the Lakers eliminated the Rockets from the 2020 playoffs, Harden said that he believed Houston was a piece away from title contention. Instead, the Rockets parted ways with coach Mike D'Antoni, lost general manager Daryl Morey and traded Russell Westbrook to the Washington Wizards. Those sweeping, abrupt changes left Harden, 31, to adjust to first-time coach Stephen Silas, first-time general manager Raphael Stone and a new backcourt partner in John Wall. The trade was made less than 24 hours after Harden had a post-game interview following Tuesday's 117-100 loss to the Los Angeles Lakers, where he showed his dissatisfaction with the Rockets. "I mean, this situation is crazy. It's something that I don't think can be fixed," Harden said. "We're just not good enough, chemistry, talent-wise, just everything. And it was clear these last two games. I love this city. I literally have done everything that I can." Earlier on Wednesday, the Rockets informed Harden they didn't want him at practice after his inflammatory comments about the team. "We felt it was best for James and best for the group for him not to come to practice," coach Stephen Silas said. Silas called the drama surrounding Harden an all-around messed-up situation. He was then asked what he thought about Harden saying the Rockets are just not good enough. "That's hard to hear, especially when you don't believe it and you know it not to be true," said Silas, who noted he didn't sleep on Tuesday night. The Rockets begin a three-game road trip on Thursday night with the first of two straight games against San Antonio. The Nets, who now have a big three of their own with Durant, Harden and Kyrie Irving, or will when Irving returns to the team, were playing in New York against the Knicks on Wednesday. After 8 straight playoff trips that included 2 trips to the Western Conference Finals, the Rockets have the West's second-worst record at 3-6 and Harden is averaging 24.8 points, his lowest average since he arrived in Houston. While Harden never issued a public trade request, he arrived at training camp late after partying in Atlanta and Las Vegas without a mask during the coronavirus pandemic. The NBA fined him $50,000 for violating the league's health and safety protocols. The Rockets, who saw their season opener postponed after several players were sidelined by positive or inconclusive coronavirus tests and contact tracing, weathered that early turbulence. Hopes that Harden's trade value might increase or his personal investment in the Rockets might stabilize if he played well to start the season never came to fruition. The Rockets are just 3-6 so far this season and only Minnesota have a worse record in the Western Conference. The team is clearly in disarray and new arrival John Wall called the situation rocky. There has to be some sort of resolution, whether it's a complete buy-in at some level or some other way to kind of get it taken care of, Silas said. So, Yeah, it's not an easy situation by any stretch of the imagination. But the team atmosphere, the good of the team, I say everybody needs to be pointed in the same direction, and that's what's best. Harden won each of the last 3 scoring titles by notable margins: 2.3 points over Anthony Davis in 2017-18, 8.1 points over Paul George in 2018-19, and 3.8 points over Bradley Beal last season. His 24.8-point average so far this season ranked 18th in the NBA, still putting him among the leaders but obviously well off his usual pace. He has averaged at least 25 points per game in each of his 8 full seasons with the Rockets, but he has never been able to get the team, which hasn't won a title since winning 2 straight in 1994-95, past the Western Conference Finals. Harden reported late for camp. He also was fined $50,000 earlier this season for conduct detrimental to the league related to him not following the health and safety protocols put into place by the NBA and the National Basketball Players Association for navigating a season during the pandemic. Given Harden's ugly recent behavior, Houston did reasonably well to restock its draft asset stockpile. The current core of Wall, Oladipo and Christian Wood likely isn't good enough to reach the West's playoffs, but they should play with a renewed spirit now that the organization has picked a direction and been freed from Harden's unhappiness. If Brooklyn's experiment backfires, Houston is set up nicely to cash in for years to come, much like the Boston Celtics did after trading Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to the Nets in 2013. The Rockets can use the rest of this season to evaluate Oladipo, who is working back into form after 2 injury-plagued seasons, and should be one of 2021's top free agents. Rather than commit long-term dollars to Oladipo or risk losing him in free agency, the Pacers swapped him for LeVert, a 26-year-old scorer who will help cover for the injured T.J. Warren. LeVert is on a reasonable 3-year, $52.5 million contract that runs through 2022-23, and he will join a promising core that includes Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon and Miles Turner. Cleveland wound up as the footnote of this 4-team trade, but it did well to grab the 22-year-old Allen as a long-term option at center. The 4th-year big man will need a new contract this summer after failing to reach an extension agreement with the Nets, but he fits the timeline for a young Cavaliers roster that includes Colin Sexton, Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro, all of whom are recent lottery picks. Brooklyn expects Harden to leave all that behind him and that his transition to the Nets is smooth. He should be much happier in Brooklyn, having teamed with Durant in Oklahoma City when they were younger and remaining close still. They can certainly do that now. Durant is averaging 29.9 points in his first season back from surgery to repair a ruptured Achilles tendon, and Irving was scoring 27.1 per game before leaving the team last week. Harden, who appears to be out of shape after joining the Rockets after training camp began, is averaging 24.8 this season after 3 straight seasons above 30, culminating in MVP honors in 2018. Also, keep in mind that Brooklyn Nets head coach Steve Nash's assistant running the offense is Mike D'Antoni, Harden's coach during his best seasons in Houston. We will have to see how well James Harden will do once he goes to Brooklyn, but it is certain that this trade gives the Brooklyn Nets a potent trio consisted of some of the NBA's highest scorers.